And if any Seahawks fan is here, they remember that the first, I'd say maybe 8 or 9 weeks of the season, they were slinging it, they were doing everything they can, and their defense was the worst defense in the history of the NFL. Well, what is going on, everybody? It is Jake with Master of Football back at it again. Happy Monday. Thank you so much for being here. Let's get after it. This is Jake with Master of Football, all things pro football, all things college football, all things video game football, anything related to American football we discuss on this show. Please subscribe to the video. Please like it. Please share it. Please comment on it. Anything like that, I very much appreciate it. That all helps out with my connections and my ability to get out there. So please do all that stuff. But without further ado, let's get into the video. All right, I've been talking a lot about Big 12 realignment, talking a lot about college football recently because college football started a little bit before pro football. So now we're going to get into a little bit of pro football action. It is just before Sunday Night Football right now. So unless something nuts happens, and again, it might, okay, to all you Rams and Bears fans out there, if something awesome happens, I apologize. I'll talk about it later. But we're going to talk about the games so far today. We're going to do a quick roundabout around the league, and then we are going to talk about the one game that I really want to discuss. Let's get into it. Okay, we got our lineup so far. So we saw how we had, I touched on this earlier, but we had Tom Brady and the comeback and beat the Dallas Cowboys in the final minutes. We had our dear friend, Mr. Trevor Lawrence, struggled a little bit early, but we can definitely see that he's got a lot of talent. You saw that, unfortunately, our dear friend, Mr. Ryan Fitzmagic just got knocked out of the game. We come down here. Sam Darnold was able to come back and beat the Jets, his former team. We see that Joe Burrow was able to defeat in overtime, as time expired in overtime, the Minnesota Vikings. The Arizona Cardinals throttle the Tennessee Titans. The Niners get out to a big lead, but then the Lions storm back. Ultimately, they were not able to convert. The Steelers were down 10-0 at halftime, and then they came back and won 23-16 over the Buffalo Bills. We have, unfortunately, I was not a big fan of the Philadelphia Eagles. And however, I thought that the Falcons would cover, and the Falcons got annihilated in that game. Eagles win 32-6. Oh boy, man, that was a huge game, man. If Baker would have completed that probably would have been the story for this day. But unfortunately, the Kansas City Chiefs beat the Cleveland Browns 33-29. A huge story was what the hell is going on over there with the Saints. They come out, absolutely blitzkrieg the Packers 38-3. They eventually pull Aaron Rodgers, and our dear friend Mr. Jordan Love gets in the game. Then we have the Denver Broncos. Man, the Denver Broncos look good. I have a soft spot for Daniel Jones, but Daniel Jones cannot help but fumble the ball. Denver is very loaded. They did lose Jerry Jeudy to a high ankle sprain. And then finally, the Miami Dolphins come back and they beat the New England Patriots 17-16. But let's talk about the game I want to talk about. I'm going to get off camera real quick. So I watched this game from beginning to end because my roommate's a Seahawks fan, so he made me watch it. But the Seahawks versus the Colts, we need to talk about the Hawks, man, because if they can show what they showed against the Colts throughout the season, there's going to be a lot of teams in trouble. I know right now that the Cardinals look real good in their road win too, but I think that the Seahawks, man, it looks like they've fixed a lot of the areas that they were weak, and they're going to be a tough out. So there's three points I have really quickly here. We want to talk about the Colts defense, the Colts offensive line, and then we want to talk about letting Russ cook. Okay, I want to come back to those three things. First thing, let's talk about the Colts defense. So these are the stats for defenses in 2020 last season. So you see down here that the Colts have the number 8 defense. Again, coming into this game, they were really, really solid defense. However, these are last season's numbers, but this season now, Seahawks come out, they're on the road, hostile environment, week 1, and what do? They go 140 yards, 5.18 yards per carry, and Russell Wilson goes 18 for 23 for 254 and 4 touchdowns, 5 incomplete passes, and 4 touchdowns. So, number 8 defense did not have a good day against dear old friend Mr. Russell Wilson. Next thing I want to talk about is the Colts offensive line. So the Colts offensive line, Quentin Nelson had hurt his foot early in the offseason. Him and Carson Wentz had that same kind of injury they had. However, both of them were able to play. They come back and they're in the line for week 1. So you see here that the offensive line rankings from Pro Football Focus. Number 1 was the Cleveland Browns, and the Kansas City Chiefs saw that firsthand. And number 2 is the Indianapolis Colts. So how did the Seahawks respond to that top 2 rated offensive line? Well, they gave up 3 sacks to the defensive line And the shocking thing about that was the Seahawks defensive line is not known for being a particularly good pass rushing team. These are the sack totals for the Seahawks in 2020. You see the number one player is Jamal Adams, and he's a safety. And then the number two player is Jaron Reed, and he's a defensive tackle who now plays for the Chiefs. And then they had Benson Mayotta, Carlos Dunlap, Alton Robinson, then a linebacker, and then a defensive end, then a linebacker. You see they had a really tough time rushing the passer. Again, come out, 3 sacks. And the fact my roommate's a Seahawks fan. He's like, I'm shocked. The defensive line got pressure when we didn't have to blitz. It was awesome. So the fact they did that was good too, in addition to the fact that the Seahawks defense held the Colts running backs to only 90 yards rushing. 23 yards rushing for your dear friend, Mr. Carson Wentz. Those were on scrambles. They were not quarterback-designed runs. So first thing, the defense looked good for the Colts. They came out and they absolutely shredded the defense. The second thing was the offensive line for the Colts. The defensive line for the Seahawks looked really, really good. The last point here I want to talk about with the Seahawks was the fact that last year the concept was, hey, man, we need to let Russ cook. We need to let Russ cook, meaning they were strapping Russell Wilson down by slowing the offense down, calling run plays, throwing little easy routes and things like that. What they need to do is just let him throw down the field as much as possible. And they did that. And if any Seahawks fan is here, they remember that the first, I'd say maybe 8 or 9 weeks of the season, they were slinging it. They were doing everything they can, and their defense was the worst defense in the history of the NFL. Because, again, this happens. A lot of college football fans will see this. If you have a really high-profile offense and you score in a minute and a half, well, your defense has to go back on the field in a minute and a half. So they actually had to slow the ball down a little bit. Now, again, the time of possession was won by the Colts, but you could see that Chris Carson had a good game. You saw that they had a couple other running backs there. They were able to kind of take advantage of that fact. Again, they had 140 rushing yards, and Russell Wilson only had 9 yards rushing in that game. So they really were doing a good job of establishing the run. Chris Carson, I believe he had 91 yards rushing. It was awesome there. The Seahawks offensive line was able to control the game. They were able to shrink that clock down a little bit, but still take advantage of the fact that they are just absolutely special when it comes to throwing the ball. Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, even D. Eskridge. He's a new rookie they got from Western Michigan. He was looking good too. So everything looked good for them out there. They could do just about anything they wanted to against a really high-profile defense that's going to give a lot of people problems this season. Now, my limitations, and again, anybody who's done a science paper knows that you have to have your ideas and then your limitations. What are some limitations here? So the Seahawks cornerbacks are not considered to be good, and the Colts wide receivers are also not considered to be good. Now, again, I actually like me some Zach Pascal. Anybody who's a fantasy fan knows he had 2 touchdowns in that game, but I think that the Colts wide receivers were not able to expose the corners from the Seahawks, but again, that might be a whole defensive line, and the corners did a good job in coverage holding up while the defensive line got there. Again, who knows? I mean, I'm not really sure. I didn't see the pressure numbers, but I do know that the Seahawks defensive line looked much better than they usually looked. Now, next week for the Seahawks, they play the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans just got throttled by the Arizona Cardinals, so that's going to be a pissed off team. We'll see how they do. But so far, Seahawks off to a good start. Looks like they've addressed a couple of the areas that they were kind of weak. They were able to kind of take care of the fact that their defense was not out on the field for 10,000 hours because their offense wasn't scoring too quickly. The offense was still really, really efficient. Chris Carson was running the ball. Their defensive line specifically looked good. So the Seahawks, man, they're going to be a tough out. I know that people are like, yeah, man, the Seahawks are going to be over. The Seahawks are going to be over. They've never had a losing season with Russell Wilson there, and it looks like it's not going to happen anytime soon. All right, so that's my thought. That's the most impressive story I saw from week 1. What do you guys feel like is the most impressive story from week 1 of the NFL? Now, again, I know. I don't have the Rams and Bears, and I don't have the Ravens and the Raiders. And you can see I'm definitely going to be watching that game tomorrow. I might even have a special video for that on Tuesday. But everyone, thank you so much for being here. Let me know what you thought the biggest story was from week 1 in the NFL, and I will see you guys on Wednesday. I am out.